Your Creative Force by Avianne is currently available on Global Voice Radio.
Talent is a flame. Genius is a fire. Broadcasting from the San Francisco Bay Area, the all-new all-hit show on creativity. Hosted by international award-winning artist and entrepreneur, Avianne. You're listening to Your Creative Force. And now here's your host, Avianne.
Hi, this is Avianne, once again coming to you from the beautiful San Francisco Bay Area in California, the USA. I am so stoked about today's topic, which is building business culture. We are on episode 18 of Your Creative Force today, and we are really on it because today's topic is one of those topics that I often feel business owners, startups, entrepreneurs, most of us ignore this topic because we kind of feel like it will just be something that automatically takes care of itself. And that is where we miss the mark, because building business culture is actually something that is very important to building a business. It should be part of the very foundations, the very cornerstones of every successful business, and building a healthy business culture is absolutely critical if you want your business experience to be enjoyable, to be fair, to be ethical, right? If you want to attract the right clients and the right talent into your business, it becomes extremely important that you build a healthy business culture. So that is our topic for today. Episode 18, Your Creative Force, Building Business Culture. And because I am not a super expert and not super experienced about the topic, I've decided to do a lot more homework than I normally would for this topic today. And I am going to refer to two articles written by people who are super on top of this topic for you today. And we're going to elaborate on that. We're going to kind of create like a think tank kind of atmosphere in this episode today, because I really want us to get down and dirty on this topic of building a business culture. So I hope you guys are going to roll with me today. We are definitely going to delve deep into this topic. Now, before we start going deeper into the content, I just want to give you kind of like an overview, okay? An overview of this topic. Many companies, from big corporations to small businesses, overlook the importance of investing some actual thought leadership into building a business culture inside their organization. In this episode 18 of Your Creative Force, I am going to tackle the subject with some thoughtful suggestions and motivations for business owners to really take a good look at how important it is to create an environment for employees and clients alike that is actually business friendly, and then how to actually go about that, right? This will prevent and it will get rid of a lot of cumbersome issues in your business. If your clients and your employees are feeling safe and like they know where they stand in your business, and they feel like they're part of a very healthy, very positive, very forward-thinking business idea, business path, if they feel like the journey they are on with you is a journey that really works for them on many levels, that is when you are going to get people who are awesome people to run with you in your business, not just as clients, but also as employees. Okay, so that is kind of the secret sauce of why building a business culture and doing it well is so important, right? It's because you want those clients and those talented people to work for you, to build your business, to be on your journey with you, to actually hire you, actually buy your products, because if you have great clients and great talent, you have a winning recipe, right? But great people don't want to work in a toxic environment. So we're going to look at that, right? So Building a healthy business culture will ensure that your employees and your clients enjoy interacting within the business environment, and it attracts the right talent and the right clients to your business. It also plays a critical role in growing your business successfully. If you have any plans, if you are a small business owner, if you are an entrepreneur just getting out of the blocks, and you have any kind of vision or motivation or any kind of goal or any kind of future plans to grow your business, let me tell you, I know enough to know that you cannot possibly do it alone. And I tell you this very sincerely. I am kind of still in the beginning of gathering and recruiting the right people to really make my organization big. Remember, we discussed that in a previous episode where I was telling you guys I'm kind of at a level 2 going into a level 3 kind of entrepreneur right now, which means my business is growing beyond just what we would call a mom and pop shop or a one-man operation or kind of like a small kind of operation. I'm heading for bigger things, and so I am forced to employ and partner with other people, but I want to attract good talent, great people into my business, right? I do not want toxic people to make my business environment toxic. So I am really learning so much about this topic right now, because as I'm growing my business, I also have to really put a lot of thought into building a healthy business culture, because I know as I expand, I want my foundations to be healthy so that as they expand, they remain healthy, right? And we have the good stuff and the great people in place that we need to run with. So, part 1 of our show today, we're going to look at, first of all, what is a business culture, and then we're going to dive into some of the wonderful treasures that come from the pens of these wonderful people who wrote these 2 articles I want to refer to today in our episode 18, right? So, it really is about your operations and your values, okay? There is something tangible and then something intangible about building a business culture, but the 2 go hand in hand. How you do things, which I would call your day-to-day operations, your systems, your processes for doing things, right? These are just as important as why you do them when you consider building a healthy business culture. Why you do them and how you do them, right? Those 2 things go hand in hand. You need to be deliberate about building a business culture, because if you aren't deliberate about it, here's the bad news, right? If you don't deliberately take charge of this thing and deliberately lay down the foundations of how you want your business to operate, what kind of how and what you want your building your business culture to be based upon, if you don't do that, okay, the organization will automatically evolve into a business culture of its own, which will likely create an environment filled with uncertainty, a lack of boundaries, a lack of respect, and even a toxic or anarchistic type of business environment. I have seen this happen to good people. I have seen this happen to powerful multi-million-dollar, even billion-dollar businesses out there. I've rubbed shoulders with these people, and I have seen a toxic business culture take down even very powerful business people. So this to me is why it is so critical to tackle this subject matter with you. It is something people overlook, okay? We tend to think as human beings that because we think a certain way, we act a certain way, we build our business a certain way, we have a certain kind of passion or dream or vision or goal for our business, we kind of tend to assume that everyone else who interacts with us in our journey will have the same vision, the same viewpoints, the same goals, and the same kind of temperament or values that we do. And you know what? That is not the case. People are very different. And it may not even be that someone is bad. This has nothing to do with someone having bad intentions or really being totally psychotic, right? Now and then you will run into people who are totally just really horrible people. But for the most part, it doesn't have anything to do with people being horrible. It just has to do with someone may not be a good fit for your business. They may not be a good fit for being a client or being an employee or being an associate or being a partner for you, right? And if you don't have a really solid grip on how you do things and why you do them and what you're actually doing and where you are actually taking your business, then people kind of get lost. They get lost in the mix of things and they kind of start going into their own visions and their own tangents, and they're no longer focusing on really helping you build your vision, and you don't even realize it because you're just like, oh, I just want to hire this person, I just want to get the job done, I just want this client because they're bringing a lot of money or a lot of business to my business. And you know what? That is not a very good foundation because it's not only about that, okay? It's so much more than that. We have to learn to really see further and look deeper and play the long game. Building a healthy business culture is so important right at the beginning when you start, right? If it's only you, one person, and then it's like 2%, or like in my business, I now have 6 to 7 people that I interact with and partner with and who I employ on a very regular basis. And I'm soon probably looking at having 10 to 15 and then building from there. And if I end up building my organization into a super mega international organization, I'm probably going to end up having hundreds of people that partner with me or work for me, if not thousands, right? So if I can't get this right with 1 or 2 people or 10 or 15 people or 20 or 30 people, how the heck am I going to get this right when I go into working with hundreds or thousands of people directly in my business, right? If I consider all the clients I have as part of the equation, I'm already looking at probably dealing with hundreds of people, right? Some more than others, some I haven't dealt with in a long time. So it's always an ebb and a flow when it comes to your numbers of who you're dealing with and what you're doing. And my business has evolved and is evolving. So my clients are kind of evolving as a result. I don't have the same clients now than I had 2 years ago or 5 years ago or even 10 or 20 years ago, right? My clients have evolved. So these things become complex as your numbers increase. The more moving parts you have, the bigger your business grows, the more people that are involved in your business from the client side or the employee or the contractor or the associate or partner side, the more you're dealing with all these moving parts, the more complex it becomes. And the more difficult it's going to become for you to actually build a business culture on purpose, right? So my thinking on this matter, and which was confirmed to me by reading up on this topic for you guys extensively, is the fact that we really need to be building a very solid business culture right from the get-go. Even if you are a one-man operation, you have to decide what you want your business culture to be like. And then the minute you bring in person number 2, 3, 4, 5, 20, 30, 40, you make sure that those people also really understand what your business culture is like and why it is like that, and that they are completely on board and on top of things like your vision, where you're going with the business, that they feel they're part of it, they feel they're driving it with you, they feel like they matter in your organization. Very important. Good people, smart people, gifted people, they typically do not stay with a company if they don't feel like the company is healthy or going anywhere or providing them also with opportunities, right? So we're going to look into a lot of these things, touch on some of them and go deeper with some of them today in our episode 18, right? Good. So I'm going to give you 3 quick examples, and then we're going to dive right into reading up some more about this together and then analyzing and elaborating on what we're reading, right? So here's a quick example of a person I know who isn't really building a good business culture into their business, okay? We're going to look at Peter, okay? Peter is someone I know. He owns a small business. It's not a super large business, but it's a pretty successful business in the fact that he has a lot of sales, right? He's doing pretty well. But the thing that Peter is not seeing and not addressing in his business right now is the fact that he has the wrong team working with him. His team doesn't share his vision. His team feels kind of lost, like they're not sure exactly where the business is going, and so they're very uncertain. So what the result of that is, in a nutshell, is that Peter is having a very hard time growing his business because he doesn't have the right team, and because he doesn't have the right team, he doesn't have a great business culture, right? People don't respect him. They show up when they want to, they leave when they want to, they just kind of sit around doing nothing, getting paid by the hour, and that is not healthy. So for Peter to turn that around, he would have to seriously rethink not only what he's doing in his business, but actually who he's employing, right? Because you can't work with people who don't respect you to begin with, and then he needs to create a clear goal, a clear strategy, and really develop his ability to actually motivate his people, right? Very important skill. Then we're going to look at a second example of Roy and his partners and associates. Now, this is a very long story. I can do a whole episode only on Roy and his business. This is also someone I have personally rubbed shoulders with. I don't know Roy as good as well as I know Peter, but I do know Roy to a certain degree. And the thing with Roy is extremely successful. Roy has built a multi-million-dollar company, an international enterprise, a huge enterprise, okay? But the problem with Roy is Roy has a tendency to kind of use underhanded business tactics. And because Roy has this tendency to do this, his associates, his employees, the people that he tends to put in charge of his business, are kind of also learning that it is okay to use underhanded tactics. And long story short, all I can tell you right now is Roy is looking at some serious issues in his business. He is probably going to lose his business because the culture he built into his business, which is a culture that says it is okay to use underhanded tactics in business, that culture is now coming back to bite him, because a lot of people are in the process of suing him, and he's actually in a really bad place right now as a result, right? He didn't really build a business culture that is healthy. Instead, he allowed a lot of things to be swept under the carpet that he shouldn't have allowed, and now it is coming back to bite him, right? And then our third example would be Christine and her company. She's built a very successful communications company in Silicon Valley, and a personal friend of mine actually worked for her in this company. But here's the problem of Christine and how she created a very toxic business environment by not really paying attention to the business culture she was actually empowering, right? She employs a lot of millennials, which in itself is not a problem. Okay, millennials can be very creative, they can be very energetic, and we need young people in our businesses because I can tell you, for me, I don't always have the energy to deal with everything. And so I also employ some younger people in my business, or actually contract them to do certain things for me when the need is there, right? So just employing a bunch of millennials, that is not the issue. But the issue came in that she employed a bunch of millennials, and then she kind of allowed them to dictate in a large portion what the business culture in the company looks like. So the result of that being that a lot of the older, more experienced people that actually built the business, that actually have been with the business for a long time and have actually carried a lot of the weight, which actually enables the success of the business. A lot of those more senior people in the business, they've gotten really irritated with these millennial kids, always thinking they know better, always trying to create very outlandish solutions for things, not considering experience, not considering the numbers, and it has really harmed the business. I don't know what's going to happen to Christine's enterprise. I have no idea, but I can tell you that I see a lot of red flags for her, because my personal friend who used to work for her was also someone who was a senior person in this business and who left because he literally told me he couldn't stand working for people who have no respect for each other and who play even really unprofessional music and some childish, foolish kind of games around the office instead of doing their work. And he just felt that it was a very unprofessional approach. A lot of money was wasted, and it was really frustrating for him to be in this environment. He is one of the most talented people in his field, and they actually lost him because their business culture was toxic. And Christine did not give solid leadership in this. She kind of just allowed very inexperienced, very young people to determine the business culture, and in the process, they pushed away all the critical people that they really needed in senior positions to help the business succeed. So that is not the fault of the people in the business. That is something, all three of these examples, these are things that go right to the doorstep of the leadership. And these examples are things that I just wanted to share with you guys to point out to you how important it is to build a business culture that is healthy and not toxic. So, may I suggest that to build a healthy business culture, the person who is, or the people who are at the very top of the ladder, must be an emotionally healthy person or emotionally healthy people, right? If you are not emotionally healthy and the people who are at the top of your business ladder, the people in charge of different departments or different aspects of your business are not emotionally healthy or mature, you're really going to suffer, because when things get tough, when there's stress, they're not going to be able to stand very solidly in that environment, right? So here's the thing. You have to invest in your own emotional health and deal with your own issues, or you will dump those into your business. We all have blind spots and weaknesses that can harm our business. It is important to be aware of and deal with those appropriately and effectively. Things like micromanaging people or being a control freak or not really being on top of the numbers and processes needed to efficiently run your business, or feeling easily threatened by high-performing people can create a lot of frustration for employees. Okay? Drama and bickering that stem from immaturity, for instance, there are so many examples I can give you. Basically, anything that hampers the business to function optimally and to achieve its goals successfully, right? You need to address these things before they become major problems. As your business grows, your issues and pain points also grow. And if you don't stay on top of those, you are creating a toxic business culture. Whether you intend to or not, it will create itself if you're not on top of it, right? So it is important to get a handle on these things before they spin out of control and create a business culture of complacency, drama, negativity, stagnation, or inefficiency, which is basically the kiss of death to your business, right? If you allow a toxic business culture to prevail and take over and infiltrate every area of your business, eventually it can actually completely undermine your business and even cause your business to close down. I've seen this happen. I've seen this happen right now with the example I talked about earlier of the person I know who allowed certain things into his business, and now after having built this into a multi-million-dollar international business, he's actually looking at losing it, because of allowing these things, right? So, we are going to take a look at some wonderful articles written on the subject and elaborate on some of the content of these articles. These are articles written by people who have done their homework on this topic and who have a lot more experience with this topic than I do. So let's go ahead and look at what they say on this topic. Now, I'm just going to start the first article, going over this with you guys in part 1, and then we'll finish this in part 2 and start on the second article. So the first article is written by someone named Sujan Patel, who is a co-founder of the company Web Profits. The article is titled The Importance of Building Culture in Your Organization. And I do implore you to go online and look up these articles, right? The Importance of Building Culture in Your Organization by Sujan Patel, okay? So here's what Sujan writes, and I find this very interesting. Companies often take a passive approach to culture. They figure that it's not something they can control or that they need to control. If they leave it alone, it'll all work itself out. In her presentation, The Best Things About Culture Are Free, at Culture Summit 2016, Katie Burke, Chief People Officer at HubSpot, says when it comes to culture, most companies have a can't-do attitude. But leaving culture to chance does more harm than good for your organization. Culture has always been important, but today it's becoming more than just a buzzword. Culture is an important differentiator to set your company apart from the competition. So, are you hearing what Sujan's writing here? Okay. Your business culture, if it's healthy and great and awesome, can actually help set you apart from your competition. So it can give you a competitive edge. I find that so awesome that she's actually, or he, I'm not sure if Sujan is he or a she, so we'll just refer to Sujan as Sujan, right? So Sujan is actually writing that this can set your company apart from the competition, which is very, very important. It's also what attracts the right talent and brings in the right customers, just as I have just described to you guys, right? So, going on with what Sujan is writing. Plus, with more than 30% of the workforce now made up of millennials, remember the example I gave you? According to Pew Research Center, culture is more important than ever. Why? Because millennials want to work for companies that share their same values. They want to feel like their work has a purpose and makes a difference. In short, they want a good culture fit. I personally, though, this is just me digressing from what Sujan is writing here, I personally think that this does not just apply to millennials. I know myself, and I can tell you, I would not want to work in a company with a toxic culture, because in companies with toxic cultures, you typically struggle a heck of a lot to get things done and to get them done well, and that will just absolutely annoy the living daylights out of me, and I would not want to work in a company like that. So for me, I actually ask myself the question, if I was an employee of my company, would I like to work in this company? Okay, so going back to what Sujan writes, if you're still not convinced that you should put a bigger focus on culture, we are going to look at 4 reasons why building culture is essential to the success of your organization. And we are going to dive into these 4 reasons that Sujan is writing about in part 2 of our episode 18, Building Business Culture of Your Creative Force, when we come back.
Catch the fire of creativity. Visit artbyavianne.com. AVIANNE. And now we return to our show with Avianne.
And we are back with part 2 of our show. Your Creative Force, episode 18, Building Business Culture. And I quickly looked through my notes on Sujan, just to remind myself if Sujan was a he or a she. Sujan is actually a he, and you can learn more about Sujan, who I think is a very fascinating individual, on sujanpatel.com. SujanPatel.com, SujanPatel.com. If you look him up, you'll see wonderful things that this man has written, and he's really a thought leader, and I think a wonderful person to learn from in many different ways, not just about business culture, but it is very clear that he really gets business culture, and he has wonderful ideas about this topic that we are tackling today. So, having said all that, we are going to go forward, and we are going to actually look at more of what Sujan is saying, okay? So, the 4 reasons why building a culture in a business is essential to the success of your organization. First of all, culture builds brand identity. Another way to characterize culture is to think of it as your brand's personality. Culture is what makes your brand unique and gives it that special edge. It puts your company's soul on display and tells the world who you are as a brand, right? Those things we were speaking about in previous episodes about your identity, your invisible identity of your company, how your brand has these aspects that are tangible and then these aspects that are intangible, right? Sujan is actually referring to that. The more your audience understands and identifies with your brand, Sujan writes, the more they'll want to buy from you. Your customers want to feel a connection with your brand, and it's your culture that will forge this bond. When you define culture, you're also defining your company's values and goals. These will contribute to your company's mission and show your employees and the public what is most important to the brand. In a blog post for Cosmetrics, Zach Buligo, Cosmetrics blog manager, writes, when you put a focus on culture, you'll have guiding principles. People will know you for this. Employees will live by it. It'll help get you through difficult times. You'll base hiring and firing decisions on these principles. It'll help get all employees working on the same company mission. In some sense, it's the glue that keeps the company together. And that is what I feel a lot of people are missing out on. If you do not deliberately create a healthy culture in your business, remember what we said before, it will actually become toxic. I cannot tell you guys how much I agree with Sujan on this. And it's actually encouraging and inspiring for me to read what Sujan is saying here, because it confirms for me my own thinking and my own way of wanting to employ a healthy business culture in my business. And just as a side note here, I actually have someone else that I'm partnering with more and more significantly in building one of my business ventures. And this person and I are actually looking at having a meeting pretty soon, where we're literally going to sit down for a whole entire day and hash out a lot of what we want our future together to look like. And I am actually going to spend a significant amount of time during that day that we are going to spend together on talking about the kind of business culture that we want to have in our business, right? What are the things we don't want in our business, and what are the things that we do want in our business? Because I think it's so important that this man and I are on the same page about what we want the business to look like. Because if we're not, it's never going to work, right? It's all going to fall to pieces at some point, because we're going to disagree and we're each going to go in our own direction, and he's not going to get what he wants out of the deal, and I'm not going to get what I want out of the deal. And that's where a lot of partnerships or associations between people in business go wrong, right? They're not on the same page. And I think if we create a solid foundation, which includes having a healthy business culture between the two of us, between our two separate things that we want to achieve here, right? That'll go a long way to help us. Okay, so first, one of the 4 reasons why building a business culture is essential to the success of your organization, according to Sujan. First, culture builds brand identity, right? We just went over that. And then second, we're going to look at what Sujan writes over here, that culture increases loyalty among employees. So important. Without loyalty, you really don't have an organization. So here goes. Culture increases loyalty among employees, according to Sujan Patel. He writes, your employees shouldn't dread coming to work. They should enjoy coming to the office and value the work that they do. Companies with a strong culture have employees who like the challenges of their job, get along well with their co-workers, and enjoy the atmosphere of the workplace. Culture gives employees a driving goal and purpose for what they do. It connects your leadership team with the rest of the employees and binds them with a set of shared beliefs. Your employees want to feel like they are contributing to something larger than themselves. This is a normal human thing. I just want to throw in here as a side note. People want to normally feel like they're making a difference, right? They're not just slugging it out for a paycheck. They're actually doing what they're meant to do, and it's a fulfilling experience, right? So, back to Sujan. Sujan writes that Jim Goodnight, CEO and co-founder of SAS, believes every company should set the bar high for culture. On the SAS or SAS website, he says treat employees like they make a difference, and they will. Remember this. Treat employees like they make a difference, and they will. Plus, employees who are more enthusiastic about the companies they work for tend to be more productive. That means more work and more business being done. Your employees' enthusiasm will also be apparent to your customers and be an attractive selling point, right? In the end, you want your business to be successful, but think about it, okay? I'm just throwing in a little side note, expanding, elaborating on what Sujan is writing here. You want your business to be successful, okay? But your business is based on people, based on relationships. People have to buy your products. People have to connect with you on the services that you offer. People, right? But it goes beyond people's skills. It actually goes beyond people's skills into the very secret, amazing source that you pour into the business culture that you are establishing, right? So, number 1, culture builds brand identity. Number 2, culture increases loyalty among employees. Number 3, culture attracts and retains talent. We've touched on this before in this episode. While skill sets and experience, Sujan writes, are important when hiring new members for your organization, you also need to hire for cultural fit. An employee's skills may get them in the door, but your culture is what will keep them there, right? It needs to be a good fit. If someone really doesn't agree with the way you do things in your business, they're going to be super unhappy working in your business, right? But if they're super happy and they feel like it works for them on several levels and it's a good fit for them in their life as a whole, they're going to love it and they're going to be a better employee as a result. Sujan writes further in his book, The Advantage, Why Organizational Health Trumps Everything Else in Business, Patrick Lencioni, founder of the Table Group, writes, hiring without clear and strict criteria for culture fit greatly hampers the potential for success at any organization. I'm going to read that again. Patrick Lencioni, founder of the Table Group, writes, hiring without clear and strict criteria for culture fit greatly hampers the potential for success at any organization. But why? Because today, just 36.7% of employees are engaged at work, according to Gallup polls. Employees who are not engaged do not do their best work and are at risk of leaving your company. And with turnover costs estimated to range from tens of thousands to 2 times the candidate's annual salary, according to Josh Bersin of Deloitte, you can't afford to lose employees, okay? Retaining your employees, I just want to add, is just as important as retaining your clients, because a good long-term employee or associate or partner is worth gold to you because they know your organization, they know you, they know where the pitfalls are, they know where the strengths are, and they can play a much better game because they have some experience with you, they have some track record with you, right? If you constantly have a turnover of new people, you have a huge problem because every time you have to retrain, rethink, re-strategize, and re-immerse someone into your business, right? Which is a lengthy and costly process in most cases. So, culture attracts and retains talent. Then number 4, culture makes advocates out of employees. So how do you find the right people to hire? Start by leveraging those engaged employees already working for you. LinkedIn finds companies can expand their talent pool by 10 times by recruiting through their employees' networks. It's true that good talent knows other good talent, and when your employees are happy with their work, they are more likely to share with others. They'll spread the word about their positive experience with your company, and you'll soon gain a strong reputation. So to summarize what Sujan Patel is writing here, number 1, culture builds brand identity. Number 2, culture increases loyalty among employees. Number 3, culture attracts and retains talent. Number 4, culture makes advocates out of employees. And those are just 4 reasons why building culture is essential to the success of your organization. But I want you to remember something. It's not just about building culture, it's about building healthy culture and doing it deliberately, right? Culture doesn't just fall into place. And just busting a quick myth here while we're at it, culture has nothing to do with putting snacks in the break room and a foosball table next to the front door. A lot of companies I see, they think that's kind of what it means to create solidarity and team spirit, but culture goes deeper than that, and I'm sure you've gathered that by now. Please go look up sujanpatel.com and see more of what Sujan is doing and what he stands for. This was a fantastic article, and I'm sure you would agree with me. Now we're going to move on to another article written by someone named Ed Nathanson, and this is called Building Company Culture, 7 Steps for Every Small Business, right? What Sujan was writing about had a lot to do with how larger companies view this and deploy these tactics of building culture into their business. But what Ed is writing about is specifically aimed at small businesses. I think what Sujan said is so important, and I think it totally applies in any business environment, big or small. But I like what Ed is doing here because he really zooms into building company culture for every small business, right? And he gives a lot of details. So we're going to try and get as much of this done, right? And go through this as efficiently as we can. So this is part of what is called the LinkedIn Talent blog. So you can find Ed Nathanson at LinkedIn. And this article was published on June 25, 2018. So look it up by its title, Google it. It's called Building Company Culture, 7 Steps for Every Small Business. Okay, and we're going to jump right in. Right now, candidates have more options for employment, Ed writes, than at any point in recent history. In other words, it is a candidate's world, and we're just living in it, right? And for small businesses, that means that if you want to fill your open roles, you need to set yourself apart, and you need to have a great company culture to do that. Just as a quick side note, you know what I noticed around where I live? There are so many nail salons, hairdressers. You can find them in one block. You'll find 4 or 5 sometimes, right? It is crazy where I live. I live in the San Francisco area, and there's so many hairdressers and nail salons. And I often look at all these little businesses, and they're right next to each other, right across from each other. And I think to myself, how can they even compete, right? Because they're all basically offering the exact same services. And you know what? I was reading this and I was thinking, this would probably be a way for them to really make themselves stand out, right? Offer a great company culture, offer benefits, make yourself stand out from the rest, be more professional, whatever it is. But I think Ed is hitting the nail on its head when he says that you need to have a great company culture to do all that, right? to be competitive. Now we've heard a lot of praise for the company cultures of tech giants like Google and Netflix, or retail monoliths like Zappos, just to name a few, right? We always hear about the big companies. But let's get real. Small businesses can't do anything with these examples, right? If I think of my own business, just to quickly mention an example here of what Ed is talking about, I cannot provide people who work for me with their own personal gym and their own personal daycare, for instance, right? I think Google is doing that. That would not be possible for me because I don't have the kind of revenue or the kind of resources that a company as big as Google does to actually do that for my employees, right? So you don't have a huge HR team with expansive budgets, Ed is writing here, when you have a small business, right? You don't have built-in and beloved brand recognition or all the perks like doggy daycare centers, on-site barbershops, and any other over-the-top benefits that those companies can offer, right? What I've just mentioned. Without all the bells and whistles, most small businesses have had to be, for lack of a better term, more scrappy in how they build winning company cultures. In my opinion, Ed writes, what they are doing are the real examples of what most of the business world can learn from, okay? It's not going to help me to compare what I do to what Google is doing because they are massive, right? And in a totally different genre than I am, business-wise. But these people are people we can learn from. So, okay. Not to say that the large companies aren't doing amazing things, but in the name of stuff my company can actually do versus what I would love to do if I had a huge budget, it's time we started offering up some examples for small businesses, okay? And examples of small businesses that are actually doing things right and that are actually relevant to the majority of the folks reading this kind of article, right? Or wanting to employ a business culture. Because if you want to employ a healthy business culture, you have to be realistic with what you are capable of doing, right? So, Ed writes, I recently spoke with 2 different small companies from 2 very different industries about how they go about building, defining, and measuring a successful company culture. Based on our conversation, there are some steps that every small business can take to build a great company culture. And we're going to take a small break here with part 2 of our show, Your Creative Force, episode 18, Building Business Culture. And we will go deeper into what Ed is writing and the steps he's describing in part 3 of our show.
Talent is a flame. Genius is a fire. And now we return to our show with your host, Avianne.
And we are back with part 3 of episode 18 of Your Creative Force. Today's theme being building business culture. And we are quickly going to dive into 7 steps mentioned by Ed Nathanson in his article, Building Company Culture, 7 Steps for Every Small Business. I am going to paraphrase some of this and not go deep into every single step. I encourage you to go read this article, Building Company Culture, 7 Steps for Every Small Business by Ed Nathanson. Ed Nathanson, June 25, 2018. He published this as part of the LinkedIn talent blog, Building Company Culture, 7 Steps for Every Small Business. We're going to quickly go through these steps as we have limited time. I'm always trying to pack in so much for you guys in 1 hour that I always feel I'm kind of getting tight here in part 3, right? So let's go through this quickly. Step 1, you have to define what you want your company culture and values to look like. Michael Montero, CEO of Buildium, a growing property management software company out of Boston, believes that to build a successful company culture, you have to answer 3 core questions. 1, why does our company do what it does? i.e., why do we exist? 2, What do we believe, i.e., what are our values? 3. Where do we want to go with the company, i.e., what is our vision for the company? Ed continues to write about step 1, define what you want your company culture and values to look like by writing down this. Michael admits that in the early years of Bullium, without answering these questions, it was much harder to build a clearly defined company culture. In the absence of answers to these most basic questions, he says, we didn't know whether we were really aligned. That was fine in the early years when we were in survival mode, but as time went on, our employees increasingly wanted to know where we were going as a company. Michael offers this advice to fellow small businesses. Don't defer what is important. Step 2. Look at what your culture is like now and if you need to make changes. When asked about how she goes about literally starting a company culture from scratch, Sarah Larson, partner and CHRO at Third Rock Ventures, has a ton of experience building company cultures in her career, and she said, culture starts with the very first person. Whatever the circumstances are that they came to be in the company, it's their set of beliefs and values that will dictate the initial build. It does not take long, maybe 5 to 10 employees, to be able to see what kind of culture exists, she says. This is when you can start to proactively make changes if you want to, right? What we talked about earlier on, do it sooner rather than later. Guys, step 3. Identify or hire someone who will be your people person. Clearly, hiring the right kind of personalities and backgrounds has a huge effect on how a company operates culturally. Sarah said there is one key hire, though, that can really help make a difference in the early stages of culture building. Your people person, right? You have to hire a people person. With the people person in your company, you can help a great deal to build your cultural endeavors. Don't make the mistake of putting the role of culture all on one person, though. Culture is not HR's job. It's everyone's priority, and it should be a top strategic imperative. So you have to have some people person, right, in your company, or a few of those, to actually create some activities, some team building, some things that can help your culture be really unified, right? And step 4, invest time in building your talent brand. Your talent brand is what your employees think, feel, and share about your company as a place of work. Sarah says she is fascinated by how few companies are building their talent brands. When I was at Foundation Medicine, we were one of the pioneers in biotech with our adoption of talent branding. Biotech is notoriously a play-it-safe industry with its branding. We saw immediate and exponential results. An example of Foundation Medicine's talent brand was this highly successful video that you can look at when you are clicking on this article. So I'm not going to go into that in too much more detail, other than saying that what Michael said about this was, I am a big believer in the power of a talent brand and the ability to articulate your culture through different channels. In today's war for talent, candidates are always passive, almost always passive. Giving them an opportunity to connect with you in advance of meeting with you, allowing them to form an opinion and then gauge their expectations once they are on site, creates another level of engagement. Okay? So if your brand seems like it is attracting good talent, you're hiring good people, and the people that work for you are being sought after, that will create a talent brand. So build that, right? You want that kind of a reputation out there. Step 5, optimize your hiring process to ensure that you are bringing in the right people. Okay? Here are some ways to make sure your hiring process is set up to bring in the right talent. 1, make sure that candidates appreciate your culture and values. If your new hires align with your culture and values, it is easier for everyone to be moving in the same direction, according to Michael. Number 2, divide and conquer in the interview process. Optimize your interviews and use your interview team to cover as much ground as possible. No one, no matter how good an interviewer he or she may be, can get a full picture in 45 minutes. Assign your team different areas to cover in the interview: skills, cultural fit, experience, etc. Right? So that was that. Then number 3, prioritize attitude over skills and experience. Okay? As a growing small business, the easy thing to do is hire that person who can do the job right now with as little training as possible. Heck, most small businesses are hiring people who are doing the same exact job they need, just at a different company. While these hires have immediate impact, usually you need to question if they will be growing with you for years after the immediate tasks you need from them is gone. If the immediate tasks, the immediate job you hire from them is gone, what are they going to do next, right? So, under step 5, number 4. Don't hire mini-me's. Ooh, you know what, guys? I'm quickly going to mention this. This is a huge one because a lot of people make this mistake. They hire people who are like themselves. You need people who are good at things that you're not good at. Remember that, right? Culture fit does not mean, Ed writes, that a new hire looks like, thinks like, or acts like you and your team in every way. Think of it as a cultural ad. Is the person someone who brings diversity of opinion, thought, experience, and background, right? Understanding this as you hire will help bring a balanced and truly diverse type of culture into your organization. Step 6, find ways to constantly reinforce your core values. Having programs and initiatives in place that regularly reinforce the core values that make up the central tenets of your culture is key to keeping your culture thriving. At Bullium, they do just this, starting with culture awards, right? There are some awards, some perks, some advantages, some bonuses, things like that you can give employees who are really performing and really adhere to your core values and really help your business move forward, right? And these are the things that you can do to really reinforce your core values, okay? We're going to move on to step 7. You have to measure if your culture is effectively attracting and engaging talent. Okay? In the absence of countless tools and the resources to manage them, how do you actually measure whether your culture is one that people buy into and like being a part of? To do just that, Michael likes to measure something he calls employee pride. We measure effectiveness in several ways, including employee engagement surveys, employee referral rates, voluntary turnover rates, and employee ratings and review sites. These measures help us tell whether we're on the right track with respect to creating the kind of employee experience we want to create. I am actually in the process of creating surveys for my employees to fill out to determine this. So I am going to end it right here and wrap it up. If you want to know more about any of these articles, go to sujanpatel.com to find out more about what Sujan writes on this topic, and you can go read the LinkedIn Talent blog article by Ed Nathanson called Building Company Culture, 7 Steps for Every Small Business. Yes. We got through it. Woohoo! Okay, so the quote for our day that we're going to end with is, you can discover more about a person in an hour of play than in a year of conversation. And that is by the famous philosopher Plato. I'm going to love and leave you. Have a wonderful time until we can speak again. I am sure that we have given you so much food for thought and so many wonderful ways in which you can build a wonderful company culture, and you can apply these in any way that works for your business. Until next time, this is Avianne signing off from San Francisco.
Talent is a flame, genius a fire. Visit us at artbyavian.com. Tune in next time as we explore your creative force. Thank you for listening.